this country. And new finance minister, my goodness, we have to start with, is Chrystia Freeland the latest high-placed female liberal getting thrown under the bus by Justin Trudeau, right? And he's the one doing the throwing? Of course he is. Of course he is. He's personally thrown every other one of those women under the bus, okay? I'll have you know, after elbowing them in the boob. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Bernie says, central bank digital currencies. Oh, okay, we're on finance. We'll start with finance minister. Sorry, it was on the wrong tab. See how finance is over here? I just had it on the wrong tab. Marky Walsh. Let's start with, is the finance minister going to be replaced? Marky Walsh is reporting. Trudeau says he's trying to recruit Mark Carney. Stays silent on Freeland staying on as finance minister. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Trudeau press conference, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to recruit Mark Carney. Oh, question, Mr. Trudeau, is Chrystia Freeland going to stay as finance minister? Next question. So that's interesting, right? The old yellow teeth wants to come into this shit show. And like, I've had some conversations. There are people, and I'll show you a columnist, Don Martin, talking about how Mark Carney, if he wants to rule the Liberals, he should let these Liberals flame out before he starts any kind of association with them. But I think it's too late for that. Table Salt says Mark Carney's in deep with these Liberals. He loves these Liberals. Rumors swirl that Mark Carney, authoritarian central banker, will join Justin Trudeau's cabinet as finance minister. He's not even elected. How does that happen? You think Freeland was bad for freezing bank accounts? Wait until you see what this tyrant wanted to do to the truckers. A thread. Now, I think somebody can step down and allow somebody else to step into their seat, but then eventually they have to run for re-election, right? So... Blacklock's reporter reports RCMP emails ridicule Mark Carney's claim that the Freedom Convoy was seditious based on his online research. It would be a stretch. Yeah, it's not seditious at all. Table Salt says Mark Carney was responsible for labeling the truckers' convoy as seditious in a February 22 op-ed. He tried to piggyback off the January 6th insurrection talk. He is as globalist as Justin Trudeau, as Chrystia Freeland. He is a piece on the board, just like they are. He was a central banker in the United Kingdom for a while, and he's done a whole bunch of damage there. And now they're moving this piece over to Canada, right? And so he is as WEF affiliated as all of those other upper echelon, Jagmeet Singh and the rest. So that's why we're getting this, right? Here's the op-ed. It's time to end the sedition in Ottawa by enforcing the law and following the money. Yeah. Mark Carney has always had a direct link to the highest reaches of government. This February 2nd text message, which was entered as evidence in the Emergencies Act inquiry, shows that as an Ottawa resident, he lobbied Marco Mendicino personally to take action, to which the Minister of Justice replied, "How many takes do you need?" after Mendicino requested military CAF be brought in if necessary, right? So I don't know that this was conversation between not Mark Carney, as far as I understand it, but interesting. Table Salt continues, it would be a stretch to say that the truckers barricading the streets and the air horns blaring at whatever decibel for however many days constitute the use of force, said the officer. RCMP sent emails ridiculing Carney for opposition to the Freedom Convoy, and too bad Mark Carney never read the law. Dangerous judgment. So it's interesting that Mark Carney was fully aligned to demonize the truckers, fully aligned with Freeland, fully aligned with Trudeau, and very publicly making the case that these people needed to be dealt with harshly and that they were somehow being funded maybe by foreign, whoever, maybe by the alt-right, right? Like, who knows? But the implication was that these people are bad actors and we should use the full force of the law against them. And that's notable. This guy wants to be prime minister. He wants to take over finance. And I've heard the argument that he's basically Poilievre's kryptonite, in that he would be able to have intelligent sounding financial conversations and has credentials where Poilievre doesn't. Poilievre is a lifelong politician, where Carney has been a central banker for a whole long time, right? He's got economic chops that, nobody in the Liberal Party has, and really Poilievre doesn't have it. Now Poilievre can talk a good game and he can get up to speed and his sound bites sound pretty good, but Mark Carney would be probably more challenging than Justin Trudeau for Mr. Poilievre to beat, except that he has yellow teeth. So there's that, and he's unelectable. I think, do you remember Michael Ignatieff? So I think that a Carney-run Liberal Party would hit like an Ignatieff party hit, right? And Ignatieff was widely disliked for being American. So Mark Carney lived in England and was the UK central banker. And then when he's not in England, he's not usually in Canada, right? He's been in Canada talking about, how great Canada is, et cetera, because he's trying to take over the Liberal Party. But he's a globalist, right? And he does what the globalists do, which is live everywhere and, wherever they like, right? So the United States, probably Europe, but other places. But I don't know that he's somebody who Canadians can trust. But if the Liberal Party positioned him as a replacement for Trudeau, it would be a different spin on the Liberal Party. And I don't think you can continue the feminist, progressive Liberal Party unless you've got somebody who's similar to Justin Trudeau. But I don't know, will Mark Carney be the feminist LGBT champion person that Trudeau is? Will he continue those policies? Will the public like that if he does? Because the public needs to be on board with that, right? And right now it's manufactured on board. Like, people are having it shoved down their throats. It is a very, very aggressive campaign to normalize this stuff. It's like having Ukraine flag in your profile. It's like going off and being a soldier in the Second World War. It is purposeful pushing of one way of thinking, and any other way of thinking is mocked, vilified, all sorts of things. During the Second World War, women would make fun of you if you weren't like planning on going to the war or whatever, because they didn't want cowards and things like that, right? So like going to war, somebody said to me, you want to go to war? I'd say no, absolutely not. And then all of a sudden, nobody's going to go on a date with you. Nobody's going to talk to you because you're a coward, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to pressure you in a different way, right? So they're doing all of that kind of stuff to manipulate peacetime people too. And it's crazy. It's crazy to align with this anything, put that Ukraine thing. Don't question the Israel-Gaza thing. Don't question this. Don't question that. And it's very effective. It works really, really well. People fall in line so quickly because they desperately don't want to be rejected by the group, right? It's incredible. Anyway, back to this. Don Martin says, crazy desperation play by the Liberals. Carney would be crazy to jump on board this sunk ship. The Prime Minister's office eyes Carney as the next finance minister as tension rise with Freeland, sources say, according to the Globe and Mail. And that's pretty wild, right? Laurie Goldstein says, after all the water Freeland has carried for Trudeau, this just goes to show that in the Prime Minister's office, loyalty goes only one way. It will throw anyone under the bus. Prime Minister's office worries Freeland's economic message has been ineffective as the party struggles. The economic message, and I'll show you Mark Garrison. I've got it somewhere in the grab bag of governance. Mark Garrison has just a tweet just trying to highlight all the benefits that the Liberal Party has done, and it's all NDP stuff, which is funny. But fundamentally, I think that the Liberals have not done a good job. Chrystia Freeland is not economically trained, and she doesn't come across as smart that way. And like not economically smart, not mathematically smart. She doesn't seem like somebody who would have a really good grasp on finances, just given what I've seen of her. And so her being in the finance minister role has been a disaster. And that's not been surprising at all because she's not trained. She doesn't know what she's talking about, right? It's like having somebody brand new at whatever, and you expect them to do like A-level work of somebody who's had 30 years experience. You're not going to get that. And we didn't get that, right? So it's not surprising that Trudeau wants to get rid of her, except that she's his handler, right? So that'll be bumpy. It'll be interesting to see where she goes. Maybe she'll be shuffled out, like they'll do a cabinet shuffle and she'll be moved to Indian issues, right? Wasn't that what they did to Jody Wilson-Raybould? You can be the Attorney General. I mean, you can be the Indian relationship person. You're Indigenous, right? So we'll see what happens with Ms. Freeland. Maybe she'll be the Ukrainian attaché, right? Who knows? But people are very, very, I wouldn't say surprised about this because look at the economy. But I don't think Mark Carney is the silver bullet. GM Forbes says, LOL, blind loyalty to Trudeau gets you thrown under the bus when you have outlived your usefulness. Prime Minister's office worry Freeland's economic messaging has been ineffective as party struggles. Did I read that already? So they're getting rid of Freeland, maybe. For Carney, maybe. And, well, get your popcorn out. It could be fun. Let's talk about finance and misappropriation of tax dollars, all the rest. Here is Maxime Bernier. He's responding to Canada's gold exports to China rise, shining through the trade tensions. Precious metals now represent Ontario's largest export to the country. So that's pretty wild. And Bernier says Canada is selling record amounts of gold to China and to central banks around the world. Gold is being remonetized by BRICS and will replace the US dollar as reserve and settlement currency for dozens of emerging countries fed up with Americans' hegemony. Meanwhile, Canada is one of the few countries in the world with no official gold reserves. All we have are US bonds that will lose value as the rest of the world dumps them. The U.S. deficit gets out of control and the Fed prints gazillions to fund it. This is a financial catastrophe in waiting. And instead of preparing for it, the liberal crazies in Ottawa keep throwing money at everything and creating more programs that we can't afford. Almost nobody seems aware of what's coming. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? Like nobody is interested. Nobody cares. The way the debt is being financed in the United States is the central bank is printing enough money to buy the bonds, right? And they have to print more money because there's more countries dumping US dollars. Crazy. So is that going to get better? It doesn't look like it. It looks like it'll get worse and worse and worse and kind of like a death spiral. But I hope I'm wrong about all that because like chocolate cereal is good. Viva Fry says Canada has committed over $14 billion to Ukraine, that's billion with a B, while offering government-sanctioned murder on citizens because it's unable to care for them properly. Explain to me how our government killing 13,000 of its citizens, more often than not the most vulnerable and infirm, is not a form of genocide. So I just think it's like I'm still stuck on this whole the government can be contract killers, but nobody else can be contract killers. You can go and you can enter into an agreement with the government to kill you, but nobody else can do that, right? You can't enter an agreement with me to kill you, right? Unless I'm acting on behalf of the government, right? You can't go to Mark's, die today, Mark's death closet and other, trinkets. Like, yeah. I mean, like, what do you have? Do you have snacks? Like, you're about to die. This is a very morbid topic, but really, like, if you're gonna sell one product, you should have cross sells. It's ridiculous. But the government is all just about death. They can do that. They can kill unborn babies. They can kill elderly people. They can kill sad people. But you can't for any reason. But they can for a bunch of reasons. And that strikes me as really, really strange. It's a really strange feature of Canada, right? If you're sick and you say, listen, my legs don't work. Could you help me by getting me a car that is kind of the same as everybody's, except that I could use my hands? Or could you help me by getting a chair lift that will enable me to stay in my house? And instead they say, we can't do that. Best we got is this death injection. How is that okay? It's not even that you're calling them up and saying, I'm real sad. I'd like you to kill me. It's like, I'm not that sad. I'm pretty good. This leg thing is very annoying, and this would make my life better. Could you do that? And they say, no, but we'd like to kill you instead. Could we do that? And you're like, no, what? Did I stutter? I want a chairlift. So it's very interesting that all of that, and nobody seems to really get upset. In fact, we discussed the benefits of it on Canada Poly, on Kitchen Table Talks. We were talking about how I was talking about this, and somebody said, my elderly relative accessed MAID, and she was in a lot of pain, and it was a benefit for her, and so I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know what to say about it, and I was like, yeah, man, because it's a hard topic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you address that without sliding completely down the slippery slope as we have done? That's a hard problem. Very difficult problem. Doug says Canadian Tire credit card write-off rate in 2021, 3.81%. That means 3.81% of the purchases on the credit card of the Canadian Tire credit card were written off, right? And now that's almost doubled, 7.83%. So that's a big increase. That's a really big increase. Notable for sure. Something to pay attention to for sure. And again, all of these red flags seem to do nothing but increase the pace at which the train that we're on is traveling. Like, we're heading to a destination. The destination is stakeholder capitalism, which is communism. And every single time something happens that is damaging to our traditional way of doing things, which is traditional capitalism, regular capitalism, where the whole goal is to just make money and to serve the customer. Every time something happens to take that out and the government starts intervening, et cetera, they're throwing coal on that engine. They're making sure that that thing is absolutely going at top rate. And if they can go faster, it's going faster every single time. And like, not that I don't know how to stop it. Stopping it would be akin to stopping that train, right? It's going to take time to stop. Or if it derails, it's going to be a big mess, right? And so, like, we're not stopping the train. We're not even close to derailing the train. In fact, if anything, we're getting to the destination faster. That's it, period. Like, John says, Ed just made a blunder that'll cost the UK billions and trigger a tsunami of legal claims. Get ready for fuel poverty and a slowing of economic growth. So Ed Miliband, who's been appointed maybe energy person in the UK, but I can't remember exactly the name of the agency that he's been put in charge of. But he's just made a blunder that'll cost the UK billions and spark a legal tsunami. So he's slowing down the gas. He's turning down the gas production. And then as soon as this went live, like as soon as the newspapers printed this, there was a retraction saying, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. And so I'm kicking myself. Hold on. I'll see if I did take it this morning. Here's the first one of those. It says, Ed Miliband overrules officials with immediate ban on North Sea oil. And they say, Chris says, Ed Miliband has chosen economic harm and damage to our energy security. Absolute maniac. And there are a lot of other people who are very, very upset about this whole thing. There's whole shows being dedicated to this morning. I saw another article that says, no, he didn't. That's not happening. No, he didn't. But I can't find it right now. But apologies. This is the first one that I saw this morning. And I saw the second one immediately after. And I thought, that's interesting. But I didn't tag it because I thought, nah, I won't make a story out of that, but it is. So we'll see how that shapes up in the UK. If they ban the North Sea oil, then the UK is not energy independent or energy secure by themselves. They need to import oil like Canada does, right? So, Yaza, right? What's the plan here? I know exactly what the plan is. Zoltan says, when you were elected in 2015, the average price of a home was a third of what it is right now. Trudeau, yes, absolutely. But let me be clear, COVID-19, Russia, Stephen Harper, and Diagolon. So this is an edited cut, but it's interesting. Here we go.
If we could go back to the housing.
Oh, too fast. Sorry.
We're in now. Just sort of as an overview, I wanted to run this past you. In 2015, when you became Prime Minister, the average house in Hamilton was about $334,000. 2024, it's $850,000, beyond the reach of many people. What happened? How did governments let this happen?
Boy, we could talk about the global economy. We could talk about the labor shortages that we're facing that continue to mean we need to grow our population, an increase in polarization, the inflation crisis, an increase in the divisiveness, and indeed more and more extremist voices slipping into political conversations. That we had a once-in-a-century pandemic at a time when democracy seems to be backsliding around the world. That is why it is incumbent on every politician, every leader, to take on their responsibilities about trying to bring people together. That in all the hubbub in the House this week, people are overlooking the fact that the leader of the official opposition refuses to condemn Diagolon, Alex Jones.
It's just a stump speech, an excuse to, bring up all of the talking points that he wants to point to, and he doesn't actually address the question at hand. Here is a very good speech. It's 2 minutes long. I think we're going to listen to the whole thing because it is interesting. It talks about fractional reserve banking. It talks about the reason we're having problems currently, and the reason we're having problems currently are all man-made. Here we go.
It is my opinion that you do not really understand the concept of banking. All the banks are broke. Bank Santander, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, they're all broke. And why are they broke? It isn't an act of God. It isn't some sort of tsunami. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal, and it's been going on for too long. To add to that problem, you have moral hazard, a very significant moral hazard from the political sphere. And most of the problem starts in politics and central banks, which are part of the same political system. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks do it all the time. Central banks repress the amount of interest that rates are, so we don't have the real cost of money. And yet we blame the real retail banks for manipulating LIBOR. The sheer effrontery of this is quite astonishing. It's central banks that manipulate interest rates, Commissioner. And plus, underneath all this, we talk loosely, in a rather cavalier fashion, do we not, about deposit guarantees. So when banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
Yep. I agree that if we let criminals continue being criminals, they'll be criminals as long as we let them. And so they've normalized this theft. They've normalized it to the degree that we don't even question it. And in fact, we listen to the criminals when they say these people questioning it are dangerous. Holy smoke, right? Holy smoke. Here's Marco Rubio, I believe, talking about Florida, but this is happening in Canada too.
Able-bodied person who just got here. That's real. That happens. That's happening every day. That makes no sense. I see a lot in South Florida are people that have been in this country that maybe came from Cuba 45 years ago. They've worked here their entire lives. They retire. They get $800, $900, $1,000 a month from Social Security. And then they run into somebody who just got here from Cuba 3 months ago, is 29 years old, doesn't work, and is given $1,500 a month in benefits by our government because they're refugees. That refugee, a year later, is traveling back to Cuba 15 times. So you're a refugee fleeing oppression from a place that you now go back and visit 15 times the following year. And in the meantime, we're giving you Medicaid, food stamps, health care for your children, cash payments from the refugee fund. So imagine if you've been working here for 40 years and your Social Security check is smaller than the benefits going to a 28-year-old able-bodied person who just got here. That's real. That happens. That's happening every day.
People who built Canada and like elderly citizens get something like $800 or $900 a month. And people who are just arriving with families and kids and all sorts of other stuff, they're getting $2,500 a month more, $158 a day or something like that, plus a per diem, all sorts of crazy stuff, man. And why? Why are we doing this? Why? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't help us. It does nothing but harm us. All right, 26 minutes in, we got to the big boy press conference. What a disaster. They pumped this press conference up. Mays says they've been hyping up this big boy press conference for a week. Strange that they think this is good messaging. Yeah, here's the hype, okay?
Big boy press conference. Big boy press conference. A big boy press conference. Hold a press conference. A big boy press conference.
Press conference, I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it. The press conference, the big boy press conference. Y'all are planning to have.
Gives his press conference, his big boy press conference. Big boy press conference.
Why? Who? Did nobody tell them? Was there not one person who said, one, this sounds stupid, and two, this sounds like he's a baby? Like he sounds like you're talking to a toddler? Does nobody say this to this group of people? Like they deserved exactly what they got. Holy smokeronis. This is Trump's Truth Social response. Crooked Joe begins his big boy press conference with, quote, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, though I think she was not qualified to be president. Great job, Joe. Yeah, pretty incredible. Here is Russell Brand highlighting what Joe Biden just said about Kamala Harris, I guess. Here we go.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. I wouldn't have picked vice.
Oh, okay. So as he's saying that, here's what Blinken and the real leaders of the United States currently, how they're responding.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is I wouldn't.
Like I could almost hear their brains screaming the F word, right? Just like, oh no, like, oh, there are many, like when Steve Carell starts talking about Toby, right? And just yelling about Toby like that. Like, oh my God, this is going way worse than we thought it was going to go. Here's more Joe Biden being like bonkers. Here, this is the same press conference. I've got one thing from the NATO summit as well.
Pace myself. In the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling into 15 time zones a week before. Anyway, that's what it was about. That's what it was about. And by the way, even with that, I love my staff, but they add things all the time. At the very end. I'm catching hell from my wife for that. Anyway, pace my.
What? Oh, okay. Big boy press conference. Seems crazy. Here's Dom Luca. He's highlighting this one. Joe Biden says, I guess he's polling better in Israel.
I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
It's the whole, the press conference didn't go well. Is a bit of an understatement, right? Here Joe Biden saying that he's following the advice of his commander-in-chief, which if he was making like a, my wife is the commander-in-chief type deal joke, it probably would have hit better than this. It doesn't seem like he was making a joke. It just seems sad.
I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. I'm following the advice of.
Ouch, right? Like, it's not happening. It's not going very well. Here's Vigilant Fox sharing a reporter saying, you called Vice President Harris Vice President Trump. And this is how this press conference ended. I'm not kidding. Here we go.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody.
Vigilant Fox is like losing it in the comments. He says, it's so strange. We should listen to Trump mocking him? What the heck did he mean? Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful